Thanks, Rita. You're watching South East Today. Our top story tonight. A teenager was among the 4 who died yesterday when a migrant boat sank in the Channel as the search for the missing continued today.
I think it's absolutely fair to say that the immediate actions of the fishing boat on scene, without question, saved countless lives.
We're in Dover with the latest. A warning that Ukrainian refugees here could soon become homeless as the war continues, but UK sponsorship agreements end.
Even if you have money and you want to rent and you have a job, it's very difficult.
COVID concerns as 4 in 10 of those eligible fail to book their autumn booster jab.
Happy Christmas, everybody!
And a magical Christmas for Yasmin, as against all odds, after recovering from a spinal tumour, she walks to meet Santa. Hello. At least 8 children were among the 39 people rescued from a migrant boat that sank in the Channel off Kent. A teenager was one of the 4 people who died, despite a huge rescue operation yesterday. The search has continued today for as many as 4 people still believed to be missing. Piers Hopkirk has our report.
Filmed from the scallop boat Arcturus, these were the extraordinary images as they helped rescue dozens from the doomed inflatable craft. The rescue operation triggered by this desperate call from the sinking vessel to a French charity.
And about water coming about onto we don't have anything for this, for feeling safety. Please help me, bro. Please.
Today, praise for the selflessness of the crew who came to the rescue.
Every single crew member on board our vessel has been directly responsible for saving over 31 lives, and I hope they are very proud of what they managed to achieve and the good job done, really.
It's emerged the majority on board were from Afghanistan. 39 were rescued, among them at least 8 children who'd been taken into care in Kent. 4 lost their lives, including a teenager.
The sea is treacherous on any day or night, but on a winter night in December in an overcrowded boat with no real seamanship on board, and a boat that ultimately potentially compromised and resulted in people in the water, is a very serious and, as tragically we've seen, a life-threatening situation. I think it's absolutely fair to say that the immediate actions of the fishing boat on scene, without question, saved countless lives.
4 people are still believed to be missing, but there's said to be no hope of finding them alive. Today's search operation stands in marked contrast to yesterday. Yesterday, while there was still hope of finding people alive, all available assets were scrambled into the Channel. Today, those searches are simply being carried out by drones, an indication that at this stage they're searching simply for bodies. While relative calm returned to the Channel, this latest tragedy has prompted calls for change.
What is the issue is, why are people leaving their countries of origin? Is it war? Is it famine? Is it climate change? And how are we as an international community going to attend to this?
Some campaigners say current policy is failing and that safe routes should be created for asylum seekers.
It's horrific. It's like watching a car crash in slow motion. You know it's going to happen. You want to stop it, but you can't. The fact is, we could stop it. We could stop it overnight by offering people safe routes. And I think the government is wedded to a path that means that they're not going to do that. But that's the only way that we're going to stop this.
It's a view echoed on the other side of the Channel.
This money should go in legal and safe routes. This money should go into the welcoming of the people. Because today it's like another drama, another 4 lives that are lost.
It's understood those on board paid £5,000 each for the crossing. Meanwhile, the Home Secretary and her French counterpart pledged to destroy the business model of people smuggling gangs, committing to working together to try and prevent further crossings and further loss of life.
Well, let's speak to Piers, who's live in Dover for us now. Piers, despite this latest tragedy, the crossings have continued.
Yes, that's right. The latest figures from the Ministry of Defence show that yesterday 8 boats were intercepted in the Channel with 401 people on board. That takes the total figure of people attempting the crossing this year alone to 45,000. Now, you may remember yesterday there was widespread praise for the rescue operation. That came from the likes of the Prime Minister and the Leader of the Opposition. Today, as you've heard, praise particularly for the crew of the Arcturus. Now, I understand that as well as pulling those migrants from the water, they were also at pains to give them a great deal of their possessions. They gave them blankets, they gave them their duvets, they gave them their provisions, they even gave them their own clothing. And it's my understanding that when they return to port in Plymouth on Sunday, they'll be given a hero's welcome.
Piers, thank you. Hundreds of Ukrainian families could become homeless within weeks unless the government offers long-term certainty on funding for refugees and their hosts. That's the warning from Kent County Council tonight. More than 2,000 Ukrainian refugees currently have homestays in Kent under sponsorship agreements with local host families. But the County Council says 500 Ukrainian households could be left homeless when those agreements end. It's increased its payments to host families to a minimum of £400 a month. Sarah Smith's been speaking to a mother from Ukraine whose child goes to school in Hawkhurst but now has nowhere permanent to live.
Enjoying the snow with her dad. This was the then 7-year-old Elizabeth last Christmas. Home was Mariupol, a once beautiful city, unrecognisable today. With her mum Hannah, she arrived in Kent last May, one of 2,000 Ukrainians in the county under the Homes for Ukraine scheme.
The host family was very kind and grateful people. I'm very lucky because their relationship and their kindness, they support me a lot, and Lisa loves them. They look after us all this period of time.
But with the 6-month arrangement coming to an end, she planned to move on, build a more independent life for her and her daughter.
I didn't expect that it will be so difficult to find the accommodation, even if you have money and you want to rent and you have a job, it's very difficult.
Instead, she's been staying with friends and in Airbnbs, worried about becoming homeless. Kent County Council has offered more money to current and potential host families, £400 per month for an individual, £100 for each extra person.
The whole aim has been to ensure that where possible, those hosting arrangements continue, that we encourage new hosts to come forward, and above all, that we seek to ensure what might otherwise have been something of a cliff edge doesn't take place.
Laura Clout's family in Sevenoaks has loved having Alina and her daughter to stay. They've all become great friends, but she says it's not something people should take on lightly.
It's not really fair to expect families to pick up this gap. I think that the government and KCC have a responsibility to be thinking about how they're going to be providing homes for people, and trying to guilt families by saying that people are going to be made homeless so they should open up their doors when they're already struggling to pay the bills isn't really fair. If people can do it, then great, but it's not ultimately our responsibility.
Hannah has got on with life here, working and studying for the future. But when she thinks about what's happened to her beautiful city, to the friends and neighbours who've died there, the effort of staying positive becomes too much.
It's very painful. We are very lucky that we survive. We are broken inside.
Now she just wants to build a life here for her daughter until her real home is safe to return to.
Well, Sarah is live for us now in Tunbridge Wells this evening. Sarah, the government has said it will make more money available for host families.
Yes, it's just announced that families who host Ukrainian refugees for more than a year will see their monthly payments go up from £350 a month at the moment, that's the standard rate, to £500 a month, and also that the scheme will be extended from 1 year to 2 years. Now, of course, we've heard that in Kent the payment is already at least £400. It can go up to £1,000 depending on how many people are staying with a host family. And the reason they're all upping these rates is because with the pressures coming from all sorts of places on the housing system, this is by far the cheapest done the most straightforward way of providing accommodation. Now, Kent County Council say they're still digesting a number of announcements made by the government on the Homes for Ukraine system yesterday.
Sarah, thank you. Experts have been forced to close a 150-acre nature reserve near Haywards Heath to fell trees that are diseased with ash dieback and stop the deadly fungus from spreading. Scientists at Wakehurst Kew's Wild Botanic Garden in West Sussex say drastic action is needed to fight ash dieback, which was first discovered in the UK 10 years ago. 87 people have been arrested on suspicion of drink or drug driving in Sussex as part of a police crackdown that began 2 weeks ago. 28 people have been charged and will appear in court. Insect numbers are declining at an alarming rate, according to new research gathered by the Kent Wildlife Trust. Their annual Bugs Matter survey asks motorists to count the number of insects on vehicle number plates. It's been running since 2004, and insect numbers have fallen by 64% since then. It's been put down to climate change, pollution, pesticide use and other damage to habitats. Almost 5 million COVID vaccinations have been administered in Sussex since the launch of the programme in December 2020. But NHS managers in the county are concerned that many people have failed to book their autumn booster jab. In fact, around 4 in 10 of those eligible have failed to book an appointment. Our health correspondent Mark Norman is here. Now, Mark, you've spent the day at a COVID vaccination in Eastbourne. What have you learned? It's
easy to forget that this has been going on 7 days a week for the last 2 years, isn't it? And how many people are eligible for first and second doses? You only have to be over the age of 5. If you're high risk, it's people who are maybe over 50 who may be at much more risk of catching COVID. But the reality is, when I went to Eastbourne today, is there's plenty of space for people to come and book, and they're encouraging people to do just that.
This is a message from the government.
First, there was the pandemic.
National emergency.
Then the development of vaccines, followed by the mass vaccination programme. But vaccination centres are far quieter now. As we've all grown used to dealing with COVID, there's a reminder today that vaccination centres are still open and have plenty of space for people to come and have either their first, second, third or booster jabs. Which jab are you getting?
The 4th jab, I believe. Well, my 4th one anyway, just as a booster and just as per asked to do so.
I think we've normalised COVID. I think people are less worried about it. But we're still open 7 days a week. Still open for people who haven't had any vaccinations. In fact, we've, I think, immunised the vast majority of people for their autumn booster now. But please, if you haven't, we want you to come forward.
People eligible for a COVID jab do not have to wait to be invited. Anyone over the age of 5 can have their first or second dose. And the criteria for who's eligible for additional vaccines are readily available online.
To help save lives, stay home.
We've come a long way in the last 2 years, but it's worth remembering that COVID continues to impact our lives on an almost daily basis.
Well, Mark, let's talk now about the nurses' strike. It's got underway today. There aren't any actual people striking in our area, but is there a knock-on effect?
Yeah, absolutely. I've been speaking to some nurses who've been at work as normal, as you say, in our hospitals today. The overarching emotion, I suppose, is anger and disappointment that it's got to this stage, that colleagues elsewhere in the country have had to go out on strike. In terms of the government response to the strike, one nurse said to me it's ridiculous and it's embarrassing, and they said they need grown-ups running the government because they're simply not engaging with the Royal College of Nurses. Some nurses from our region took a day off and went up to picket lines, particularly up to London, and took part to demonstrate there. But the overarching other emotion is this is unsustainable. What they're doing on a daily basis is unsustainable. Another strike next week. Ambulances out on strike next week as well. Once again, a massively challenging time for the NHS.
Mark, thank you. Now, it's just after 7:15. A reminder of our top story tonight. At least 8 children were among the 39 people rescued from a migrant boat that sank in the Channel off Kent. A teenager was one of the 4 who died yesterday, despite a huge rescue operation. The search has continued today for some still believed to be missing. Also in tonight's programme.
2, 1, go!
They didn't think she'd walk after a tumour. The Sussex 4-year-old who stepped into Santa's grotto to fulfil her Christmas wish.
And with clear skies, light winds and lying snow, it will be another bitterly cold night, but the mild air will arrive through the weekend. Join me later in the programme for your detailed forecast.
At 17 stone and in a deep depression, Henry Ainsley never imagined he'd become an endurance athlete. But this year, the Sussex runner is on course to cover 2,022 miles, raising awareness about suicide and men's mental health. Now known as the Bearded Runner, he's raised more than £75,000 for charity. But Henry's journey started with his own suicidal thoughts after his brother took his own life.
I stopped speaking with my eldest brother, who's one of my best friends, for maybe 3 years. I got a knock on the door at 3 o'clock in the morning to say that he'd passed away. And in the same year, I lost my uncle to suicide, and I lost my friend to suicide. It was the darkest hole that I never thought I could ever get out of. I started running, and I could only run from lamppost to lamppost. I said I was going to run the Great North Run at 17 stone. So crossing that line that day for me was what I class as the start of my life again. It was my Olympic moment. So last year I challenged myself to run Land's End to John O'Groats. Unfortunately, 2 marathons in, I got pneumonia and it nearly killed me. So this year, not being beaten, I set myself out to run 2,022 miles, 365 days, which will be the equivalent of running the length of Australia. I set out to raise a lot of money, and I think some guy said to me one day, if you've saved one life, there wouldn't be amount of money on the planet be as equivalent. And from that day, it was more about, you know, the impact I made on people. And I get phone calls at 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, people who feel like they've nowhere to go and the end of their life. And these are young people, these are all walks of life, these are businessmen, these are directors, these film actors messaging me saying, without you, I wouldn't be on this planet, which is quite humbling. My message will always be out and be strong that, you know, there is a way forward, and suicide and self-harming is at that time seems the only way out, but it's not the way out. I am the living example of the phoenix from the fire.
Henry Ainsley telling us his story, and if you've been affected by any of the issues he's raised, there is help available on the BBC Action Line. Call 0800 066 066 free of charge, or go to our website bbc.co.uk/actionline. In his long career, celebrity journalist Rob McGibbon has interviewed countless famous faces, but nothing has captured his imagination quite like the tragic story of Olive Higgins from Margate. Olive was just 16 when she set off for finishing school in Paris in 1914, recording everything in her diary. Just 8 weeks later, she died. But as Charlie Rose reports, her story is now being told on social media, with Olive's words read by another 16-year-old from Canterbury.
My last year of school life. Recorded by Olive Higgins, The Patch, Cliftonville, Margate.
Written in 1914, this is the personal diary of a schoolgirl leaving home for a new life in Paris. Her words brought to life by another 16-year-old, Anna.
Friday, 2nd of January. Wake up early. Rather funny feeling. Oh, Paris today, that accounts for it. Much rushing and hurrying by Dad and Pegs. Leave at last amid luggage and Aline's tears. Snow very thick between Margate and Dover. Slip most of the way. There's so much in the way that she speaks, and so the vitality and the warmth in the way that she writes, which sort of really reminds me in many ways of myself, really, and of other people my age. Arrive Calais 2 o'clock, feeling peckish. No luck, cannot speak French.
But this story of the girl from Margate, whose wealthy father founded Cliftonville's Hydro Hotel, has a tragic ending. 8 weeks after starting her diary, influenza claimed Olive's life.
This cutting was from the local newspaper in Margate, and it was published a week after Olive died. It was announcing the fact that she had died. And there are two distinct watermarks on there, which I believe came from teardrops. And I believe it was Olive's stepmother, Pegs, who would have cut out the local paper cutting to preserve in the diary, and these are her teardrops.
Rob's grandfather lived opposite the cemetery in southeast London where Olive is buried. Growing up, Rob remembers vividly looking out at the gravestones. The diary fell into his hands from an antique dealer 20 years ago during a difficult time in his life.
Her story had come to me for a reason. I felt it then, I still feel it today, and I want to do all I can to tell that story because I felt it was given to me for a reason, and that is to tell Olive's story.
Sort of knowing that someone my own age living so close to me, almost 100 years ago, it's so special to have that story told. And yeah, something that I think people will be so interested in hearing. Arrive Paris, more bother with luggage.
The audio diary will be released in the new year, day by day, via social media. Charlie Rose, BBC South East Today, Chelsea.
Now, for any child, meeting Father Christmas is a magical moment, but even more so for Yasmin, a little girl from Sussex who almost died as a baby after a tumour damaged her spinal cord. Doctors said it was unlikely she'd ever be able to walk, but after treatment at a specialist centre in Crawley, Yasmin has made extraordinary progress. And this year, as Simon Marks reports, she made a special Christmas request to walk into Santa's grotto.
2, 1, go!
4-year-old Yasmin enjoys her sessions at this neurological rehabilitation centre in Crawley. To her, it feels like a game, but when she was born, things looked very different.
Yazzie was just under 3 months old. I noticed that she wasn't moving her legs, and then it kind of went from 0 to 60 as it does. And suddenly we were blue lighted to Southampton, and they told me that she had a spinal cord injury, she wouldn't move. They reckoned it was due to a tumour that had infiltrated into her spine that had caused a spinal cord injury. This all happened on the 17th of December, so Christmas, just stuck in hospital. She got given a less than 5% chance of survival.
Yasmin underwent treatment, including chemotherapy.
Luckily, the chemo worked brilliantly, and I was a bit like, okay, now what are we doing about her legs?
The damage to Yasmin's spinal cord made it unlikely she would be able to use her legs. But Jessica, a paediatric nurse herself, remained optimistic.
You kind of have to have this hope that actually you never know what the future holds. We kind of found a little wheelchair. It meant that she could go explore the outside world a bit better rather than being stuck up inside. Okay.
Then Yasmin started attending NeuroConnects, where staff began working with her in the hope of stimulating some movement.
That's it. Ready? We provide therapy in a fun and kind of creative way, where we're trying to help excite their nervous system and try and encourage as much recovery as possible while still making it fun and enjoyable. Wow. If I told Yazzie to do 10 squats, she would be like, can I go play with something else? But if you say, we'll do it on the flying machine. Yazzie has progressed incredibly, regardless of what the diagnosis might have suggested originally.
After 2 years of therapy, Yasmin has achieved what seemed impossible. She's on her feet, and now there's one more special person she'd like to meet.
She wants to take some steps to go see Santa, and she wants to try and do it without her crutches. So we will see.
Come on.
Who's come to see Santa? Is that Yasmin? Do you want to have a little sit here? And now the very, very good news. There's an extra special Christmas present for lovely Yasmin.
Thank you, Santa.
Oh, the pleasure's all mine. Before you go to sleep, if you look out your window and you see a shooting star, that's me on my sleigh. And you go, Merry Christmas.
Happy Christmas, everybody.
Oh, Oh, happy Christmas, Yasmin. 4-year-old Yasmin ending that lovely report from Simon Marks in Crawley. Time now for a look at the weather. It's not getting any warmer just yet, is it, Nina?
Not yet. We've got a little longer for this cold weather, but we are forecasting things to turn much milder through the weekend, with Sunday being that real change day. Now, whilst for most of us we still have got those wintry scenes with icy conditions, of course not all of us have got some snow, and this was the scenes on the beach at Broadstairs today, enjoying the sunshine and fine conditions there. But for all of us, it is a case of a widespread and a hard frost, whether you've got the snow or you haven't got the snow. It is just much colder across those snowfields. It really does allow the temperatures to fall away. Last night we got to -8 degrees. I think we will get fairly close to that tonight. So a very cold start to things tomorrow morning, but little change as far as the weather is concerned. Temperatures really struggling despite there being some sunshine out there. Through the night tonight, we're just picking up a few showers, which could be wintry across parts of East Kent. Everywhere else is looking dry, with a potential for some freezing fog, particularly across northern and western areas. So tomorrow morning, that fog may linger for a time, but it should clear and we'll have some brighter skies through the afternoon. Still, we might pick up 1 or 2 showers across parts of East Kent, but generally through the afternoon it is going to be a case of it being dry, sunny, but very cold, and of course very icy, where everything has frozen once again overnight. And we're still keeping those clear skies and light winds as we go through Friday night and into Saturday morning. Just signs of things starting to change as we pick up a little more cloud from the southwest, but I'm still expecting temperatures to be well below freezing first thing on Saturday morning. But as the winds start to change direction, we are picking up that milder air. As the milder air comes across the cold ground, it is going to form quite a lot of cloud, things turning more overcast through the day on Saturday. But we will see more thaw of that snow because temperatures at around 5 to 6 degrees. It's this weather system that's bringing the change. Southwesterly winds, the milder air, and of course some rain. Now that is bumping into the cold air, so potentially a little bit of sleet and snow for a time, but of more concern is that wintry mix falling on our frozen ground. So for Sunday morning at the moment, we've got a Met Office yellow warning in force, and that really is because there is the potential for some icy conditions for a time, because eventually that rain will take over and we'll see the milder air arriving. So while temperatures first thing on Sunday sitting around freezing, the cloud arrives, the wet and windy weather arrives. It could be a little tricky for a time, but by the afternoon, a big change in those temperatures. 10 degrees, Ellie.
Wow, I never thought I'd look forward to rain, but there you go. Thank you very much, Nina. It'll be good to get a bit warmer, won't it? That's it from us. Ian Palmer is back with your late news at 10:30. Bye-bye for now.